Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm excited. We're recording another episode of Rock Realities and Revelation.
Another one.
Another one. How's your day been?
Living the dream as always. What about you?
It's been all right, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what I saw, though? I was seeing a bit more on social media, and what I was thinking was I've been seeing a few more posts about this old positive reinforcement training
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And recently I've had a couple of folk at classes and things mention they've said to me as they've been trying things and they're getting frustrated with their dog's behaviour, they're saying that I'm trying to be using positive reinforcement and praise the good and ignore the bad. And I have to admit, that does make my heart sink
Right.
with that, because I'm like, that's not, positive reinforcement isn't about ignoring stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That grinds my gears, because
I kind of know what you mean, but tell me.
well, it's like, when you see, like, on social media,
Mm-hmm.
trainers saying about being positive and stuff like that, and using rewards and things. And I honestly think nowadays it's becoming misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not, I don't know, we're just kind of missing something in it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes we're not setting enough boundaries, we're not helping the dogs as much as we can. And I think we're thinking, if we use food to reward the dog, or if we use toys to reward the dog, then we're being good with the dogs and it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's more nuanced than that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And I sometimes feel that people think you're all airy-fairy if you're like a positive trainer.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be considered airy-fairy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, look at me.
I'm not sure anyone would consider you airy, but
I know I don't want to be airy-fairy in a cap. That kind of thing. So I think, so I suppose expanding on it, for me, the definition of these terms, right? So if we look at things technically and stuff like that, if the dog does something, so does an action, and the consequence of that action, the dog has found enjoyable, and the dog is like, oh yeah, I like that consequence, we can say that behaviour was positively reinforced. And we would know that because we would then see an increase in the dog performing that behaviour again. And that's kind of how we would know the dog enjoyed the consequence. So if it was something we were doing, for example, if, say when you call the dog back to you, you give the dog a tasty reward, right? So whether this is like bitsy hot dog, a tasty dog treat, a bit of chicken, whatever. Yeah. You saw the dog coming back to you quicker. And when you called them, you maybe saw the dog coming back to you when you hadn't even called them because they wanted to taste a bit of food. The dog's behaviour is showing you that they have found that enjoyable and they have found that to be a positive consequence to their action. Right? Equally, it happens with stuff that we don't manufacture. So if your dog's got into the rubbish bin in the kitchen and has found the leftovers and has eaten, the pasta from yesterday or something. Yeah. There's a safe chance that dog's going to go and raid that bin again.
That's amazing. They're definitely going to repeat that.
Yeah, they're like, yes, prizes for me. Yeah. But then when we talk about punishing a behaviour and things like that, and I think this is what, if we want to try to be sort of nice, for want of a better term, with dogs and stuff like that, when we talk about punishing, I think people get nervous around that word, because they think punishing is being horrible to the dog in some way, whether it's shouting at them, hitting at them, intimidating them, whatever. Yeah. But if your dog does something and the consequence to that action the dog didn't find enjoyable, you will see a decrease in the dog performing that behaviour again. So therefore the consequence was punishing by definition. That's basically what that is. Right. So this could be, you've called the dog back to you, you've offered them a bit of chicken, and they don't really like the bit of chicken. It's not reinforcing to them. They didn't like it, they didn't like the smell of it, whatever. And if you saw the dogs not coming back more often, and not even coming back when you've not called them, when they used to,
Yeah.
they've found that chicken really off-putting. Like, maybe it was a bad bit of chicken. I don't know. It's maybe not the best example to give, but
Yeah.
we think we're doing something nice, but the dog's behaviour is telling us, no, you're not doing anything nice there. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Equally, it can happen just in life, in general. So this could be, say you've got a dog who wants to be sociable, and you would like your dog to be sociable with other dogs and play and stuff like that. And it's in that weird adolescent phase, and it keeps running up to other dogs, and its social skills aren't the best, so it keeps getting told off.
Mm-hmm.
You then might notice your dog doesn't go up to other dogs as much, and it's been finding that is negative consequences because it keeps getting told off
By other dogs. Right.
So now it's like, nah, I'm not even going to try that now. That behaviour's been punished because we've seen a decrease in the dog trying to be more sociable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But you know what's just popped in my head, and it might be a really random segue, but are we then accidentally punishing our dogs like all the time?
Oh.
By, you know, like if we're in a rush and we're not letting them play with other dogs, or, you know, we're not letting them get the reward of like a really, you know, good sniff. You know, they've been really well behaved on their walk. They want to just stop and sniff a tree. And we're like, no, you know, come on. You know, and so we're not letting them have that reward. Are we just accidentally...
We are, but I think that...
Am I just overthinking it?
Yes and no. I think there has to be boundaries. And I think sometimes this is where, if we wish to raise our dogs using positive reinforcement and positive training and stuff like that, and that's our belief system, and that's how we want to raise our dog, I think you absolutely could go to the extremes where you constantly try to put the dog's needs first. So it's like you're saying, some people, you know, if you do have a really sociable dog, by not letting them say hello to other dogs, that's disappointing. They're not getting to do what they wanted to do. And from there, yes, technically that dog's not as happy and not getting to do things, and it's sniffing. Dog trainers, like everywhere, constantly try to tell owners about the benefit of letting a dog sniff on a walk. And yes, it can be irritating for us because we're walking a little bit and then the dog's stopping and sniffing, and we're like, oh my God, I want to get my steps in, I want some exercise, I want to try and get fit, you're just stopping and I can't get very fast.
Yeah.
When we constantly move the dog on, that walk isn't actually going to be that fulfilling for the dog. It's a bit, you know, they haven't got to take in any information, they haven't got to say anything, so yeah, that's rubbish. But we all know life doesn't, where you get to do what you want all the time. And I think this is where a balance has to come in. And I think this is because there'll be dogs on a walk that don't want to meet your super sociable dog, your friendly dog. They just don't want to meet him. And your dog's not going to enjoy the consequence of going up to those dogs. Equally, there could be times where you have to get home on the walk. You can't just let the dog sniff every blade of grass. I mean, I used to have a Basset Hound, Oscar. And honestly, see, if I just let him sniff, we would have got nowhere. Like, there'd be no exercise for either of us and stuff like that. So I think you've got to watch for me anyway, you've got to watch which extremes you're going to. And I think this is where things are starting to get murky within the positive training side of things and what people think is positive and stuff like that. So I think for me, when I'm teaching my dogs to do something, the fastest way to get things done is to give them a reward that they deem positive, that they enjoy. So this is making sure that we use food types that they enjoy and that they like, and the way that we deliver that food as well. Some dogs in certain moments don't want food just shovel. Just because you're shoveling in a treat doesn't mean your dog's actually enjoying it. So you have to kind of look at the bigger picture. But I think also, you know, if we're going to be using toys could be super fulfilling. And it's something that we don't use as much of. Because I think it is easier to use food. And stuff like that.
I think that makes it tricky then if you try to transition into any kind of sports or anything like that, because that tends to be a lot more toy driven. than food, you know, like your agility and stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think toys can be, sport. People that start doing sports with their dogs, I have to admit, are much more open to using toys and will use them more often. Like, I think what I've noticed is, and I use toys with my dogs a lot, but then, you know, I like to do agility. So for me, that's quite a normal thing to do. But I do know, listening to people that I've worked with and stuff, toys seem to be for set times. So this could be that, you know, after we've had our lunch, for example, we'll have a game in the garden with our toy. Or when a certain person comes home, that's the person who plays with the dog with a toy. Or after a walk at night, that's when a toy comes out and play, which is wonderful. I think that's great. I think playing with toys in any way, shape or form is always a bonus. But it's not used in a reward scenario, because a reward really is it's given either immediately after a behaviour or kind of during a behaviour to say, well done, that's kind of like what I wanted you to do, kind of thing. So when we try and use it in that context, a dog can be a bit like, oh, you've just asked me to sit and now you want me to play with a toy. Oh, that's just weird. And we don't take them on walks. You know, we don't take them out on a walk, and dogs aren't very good at generalising. They'll just like, no, our toys are in the garden. We don't play with them. What's you doing? And I think because this is a good example of positive reinforcement, because the dog will play with the toy in that scenario because it's a bit alien to them. We've not been reinforced for bringing out a toy. We just kind of stop using the toy and stuff like that. So we just don't take it. So we lose a type of reward and stuff like that.
It's interesting because I think like police dogs and stuff, sniffer dogs and that,
absolutely,
they're working for the toy, aren't they? So do you think, I don't really know much about police dog training, but do you think they've only ever had the toy as a reward and they've never used food?
They use both.
Right.
I don't know, I'm not an expert in it, but I do know like they use both, and I think it's how you present it, and I think it's how what the dog's expectations are. And also you do get dogs that are proper foodies and toys genuinely don't float their boat. And you have dogs who from, you know, a young age might never have had a toy to play with. So it's of nothing of value to them. They've had nothing attached to it. So for example, if I see this a lot with people that have rehomed a dog from overseas. Those dogs, nobody sat and played with toys with them. That's like, it doesn't mean anything to them whatsoever. So those dogs, when we go to introduce a toy, they're a bit like,
there's no value in
no, they're like, what can we do with that? And that's just because of their early exposure. Whereas dogs that have been bred within a home, the chances are the humans have provided toys, the humans have already played with the toy before they've even left there. So the dog is much more likely to recognise that as like a reward and stuff like that. So I think,
for us normal people though, who are not dog trainers and training police dogs and stuff, I feel like using food reward is probably a bit easier. Like our timing can be a bit shonky. You know, when we deliver the cheese can be a bit off, but it just doesn't seem as complicated.
No, and I suppose that would be the benefit of going to a trainer. That's going to help you and is going to open up that world, because I think the other reward system that is completely undervalued is using the environment. You know, dogs love a sniff. So the dog could do something for you and then go off and sniff. And that particular dog might find being able to go off and sniff far more fulfilling than eating a bit of cheese. And then lo and behold, because we've chosen a better reward for that particular dog, you totally see an increase in the behaviour that you're trying to get in the first place. It could be the dog gets to swim if the dog really likes water. It could be that the dog gets to get off lead and run around after they've done something. It doesn't just have to only be food treats that we use when we talk about using positive training to raise our dogs and stuff like that. And I think, you know, that needs to be explained a bit more. And I think it's Because I just think people think, oh, if I just keep throwing food at the dog, it'll get better, it'll behave, and I think we need to be clear about what do we want the dog to do in a given situation. So we have to have boundaries about what's acceptable and stuff. So and everybody has their own boundaries. Like, for example, I let my dogs up on the sofa and things. Like, I quite like to snuggle up on the sofa. But I have 7 dogs. They don't sleep in my bed. You know, I can't really have 7 dogs in my bed. There's no room for me. So for me personally, being on a bed is a no-no in my house because of the sheer number of dogs I have. Nothing to do with the dog thinking they're entitled. It's nothing to do with the dog possibly being dominant because I've got my bed. It's simply the fact that I've got 7 dogs and I would enjoy a good night's sleep without getting kicked in the face.
I mean, also you don't bath them super regular either.
No, I'm terrible at that. No, I'm not very good at things like that. Whereas for other people, so I don't mind the doggy smell. You know, we'll go swimming in rivers and in the sea frequently. But for other people, the boundaries is they want the dog to smell nice. So for them, that dog will get bathed on a regular basis. I mean, also there's the health reasons. It does help.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. But this is it, and what's acceptable to you is different to what might be acceptable to somebody else. But I think the big thing is you can put in boundaries when we choose to train positively. And I think a lot of people nowadays are not. Because they don't want to make the dog feel unhappy in any way and I just don't think that's healthy. They need to know boundaries. I mean, we spoke previously on another podcast where we spoke about behaviour is just behaviour and how it's the dog being a dog and stuff like that. But there is just some things that natural dog behaviour that is just not acceptable in the human world. We just can't have it happen. And I think for me, when you're going with positive training, you just don't want to be... You don't want to scare the dog. For me, I don't want to use fear, intimidation or pain to make a dog do something for me.
100%. But, you know, can you tell your dog no? Can you tell your dog to pack it in?
I think you can. And I think there's ways to do it. I think... So, with my younger dogs, I will think to myself, what's your level of understanding about what I've just asked you to do? So if we're literally just learning something, for me, there isn't much point telling my dog no, because no carries no information. It's very final. It's just no. We, as a human being, we understand that as stop. Don't continue that. But for another species who doesn't speak our language, who doesn't even live in our world, really, and knows all the customs that we have, you may as well just be shouting squidgy squidgy for all the help it's going to give you. And we generally get quite frustrated because, of course, the dog doesn't stop doing what we're doing because they don't understand what it is. And that's where we can start to lead into just the dog feeling intimidated and scared. I've never met a single person that laughs and goes, no, like, no, don't do that. You know, most people, it's, no, stop it, you know, and all this. And your tone of voice has changed. You tend to lean into them. We do a lot of pointing. And the age-old argument is, well, my dog understands no. And it's like, meh. I think the dog's picked up on the body language and the tone. And when they've backed off, funnily enough, we've stopped. We've stopped sounding intimidating. We've stopped looking intimidating. So the dog's like, must have got it right. And all they've done is pick up on your body language. They haven't understood what they should have been doing. So I tend to not say it that much when my dogs are in the learning stages of everything. I will take a breath and think, right, what do I need them to do? And what behaviours do they know that I can ask them to do that will stop the behaviour I didn't want to happen? So if it was like jumping up, for example, I would ask them to put their paws on the floor.
So I was going to say, when we started this chat, we were saying about how people think ignoring the inappropriate behaviour is the answer, and you were saying no, it's not the answer. So I suppose that's similar then to saying no, isn't it? It's not teaching the dog anything, it's not showing the dog what is appropriate? I mean, are they just to try a whole bunch of behaviours until they finally get one that we like?
Yeah.
So what are we doing then? How are we putting in that training that shows them that actually this is what's going to get you the reward?
Yeah. So that's
Jumping up, for example.
Yeah. So I think there's elements when we first have a dog, whether this is you've got a brand new puppy, whether it's you've rehomed a slightly older dog, whatever, they're going to have to learn what your boundaries are, how you expect them to do certain behaviours, stuff like that. So to a certain degree, there's always the joy of control and management, which is you are orchestrating the environment so the dog cannot perform the behaviours that you don't want.
Yeah.
So this would be, if you don't want them jumping up on your kitchen worktops, stop leaving food out on your worktops, because that's definitely...
Shut the kitchen door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want your dog running into traffic. That's why we use a lead. When we're near roads, that's control and management. You don't want your dog chewing things. If you're out, you get them comfortable with being in a crate, and so it's all these types of things. And I think that from there, what you then start to, you're trying to future-proof your training. You're trying to teach the dogs the behaviours that you would like from them. And when they're giving you a normal dog behaviour that you're kind of deeming inappropriate, then try and ask them for something that'll stop that behaviour, but is an actionable step. No is not an actionable step.
Yeah, and neither is just ignoring.
No.
Yeah.
No. Because you got to look at it. So I suppose on the ignoring front, there's scales of it, for example. Because I think sometimes it depends how we react to certain things. And it depends how invested the dog is in that behaviour, for example. So if the dog is jumping up on something, then some dogs, if you get up and you're all like, oh my God, get off, what are you doing? Or they're jumping up to steal something, then you'll be chasing them. Yeah. Technically, you ain't ignoring that behaviour, but you're kind of potentially feeding into it. Because the dog's now like, if I put my feet up on here and then I go to grab this, you will stop what you're doing immediately and you're going to come to me and you're going to do things. I think there's a certain bracket of dogs that go, oh, that's hilarious. I'm just going to do more of that. Whereas actually, see if it wasn't the end of the world with whatever they stole. So say it was like a tea towel. Yeah. And they're not going to chew it. They're not going to ingest it. They're just going to want to carry it. If I've started to work out my dog's doing that for kicks, actually that I'm going to ignore, because that is, the dog wants something out of that scenario. So I'm going to give them the opposite, which is I am just going to carry on. I'll keep a wee side eye out and stuff. If it's that, they've jumped up and I've asked them pause on the floor and I can reward and everything like that, I will interrupt quite quickly. Same with barking. If my dogs are barking at something, I'm going to interrupt them to turn and look at me. I don't want it to go on and on and on and on, which if I just stood back and let it bark and waited until it stopped and then gave it a treat, no. Yeah. I've got gobby collie types. That would go on for a long, long time. So I would interrupt that behaviour to get them looking at me and either put in more distance if it was something that was spooking them or worrying them, or if it was something they wanted to get to, then the further away you are, the less interesting it is. So therefore the barking would reduce. And it would just be information for me as to what we need to work on and stuff like that. So I think there are very few scenarios I have ever said to somebody, ignoring works. Yeah. We do need to interrupt the behaviours. We just don't have to be horrible about it and grab the dog or, scare them, whatever. Just ask them an actionable behaviour. Yeah, definitely. That will, because then that is something we can reward. That in itself, you should see an increase in that happening. And the so-called naughty behaviour should just start to disappear because the dog does know now how to function and how to do the thing. So thinking about if you were teaching your dog a new behaviour, a new skill, and you've found out what the perfect reward is for your dog, withholding that reward when they don't get the behaviour, that's teaching them, right? But
is that a punishment? Like, so, you're doing your best, you're trying really hard, you're giving your everything, you're still not getting it quite right. So you withhold the chicken. Is that being a bit mean? Is that being a bit...
I see that as a life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see that as...
Like, should you get chicken just for participating in the...
I call them pity treats. So...
Like, thinking about the Olympics, I'm kind of like, oh, the person in fourth, like, they've literally lost out on bronze by a ball here, right? It's like, there should be medals for everyone.
Well, this is what I was going to say. This was always my pet hate at school, because we were out, well, certainly my generation was starting to become, as we were sort of going up, we're giving away our ages here. We're still 21 people, still 21. But we were starting to get to that bit where you just got a wee medal for participating.
Taking part. Yeah,
you could be the wee last gen.
Yeah.
You still got a medal. I don't think that's helpful, if I'm honest with you. And I don't think it is that detrimental to the dog to not give out a pity treat.
Right.
So a pity treat to me is where we've done you tried. You've not done anything correctly at all, but you tried your hardest.
Yeah.
And there's the treat. And I think...
Like, that's how I am with my grooming customers. Like, this has been a complete riot of an hour and a half. But here's all the chicken anyway.
And I think you have to weigh up what we're doing, though, because for me, rewards are a form of communication. Rewards are feedback that the behaviour you just did, I would like you to do again. So we're trying to use positive reinforcement to increase the chances of it happening again. If you become wishy-washy with those rewards and they just are coming out here, there and everywhere.
For everything.
How on earth are you supposed to get any clarity from that as to what was that one bit that actually you wanted them to actually do? So my favourite is, because again, I see this a lot at classes, they've asked the dog to do a sit, and then the dog sat, but then the dog's like, oh, I'm awfully tired, I'm going to lie down. So as the dog's gone into a down, they've still rewarded them because they tried. They tried.
So they did do a sit, it was 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
I've been fumbling in my pocket this whole time.
And if you do that repeatedly, I can guarantee you, when you say to that dog sit, it will very quickly go into a down. Because that was the point they got rewarded. And then the human gets annoyed because they go, I said sit, because the dog's maybe a bit older or they feel their training's been going on for a while and they should know better. But it's had really crap instruction. So how is it supposed to know any better?
Well, it's like all these dogs who think that you have to say sit, 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 sit.
Once enough.
To sit.
Aye, like, once enough.
I have to wait till my owner says it 6 times. and then I put my bum on the floor and I get the chicken.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how important then is it to end a training session like that on a high?
Well, I think you have to look at the individual dog and what you're teaching, because I think, I'm being quite flippant by going, nay, pity treats and stuff, but we're going into slightly two camps here, depending on the dog and what you're trying to teach. When you've got a dog who is learning something, and for me, if they've not got it quite right, if they're sort of slightly misunderstood something and they've offered me something else in its place, I won't just deliver the reward. I'll ask for it again. So if I feel we've practiced it quite a few times and the dog's got quite a good inclination of what this is supposed to be, I will ask the dog to kind of work through this frustration, because I do feel that's a skill that needs to be learned. It's not something that comes naturally. And there's loads of things throughout your dog's entire life that they're going to want to do, but they can't do, and then they can't receive instant gratification. So we have to help the dogs build through that frustration and be resilient to it and not let the world end and stuff like that. But then you can get to a point where your dog is actually getting so stressed at not getting it right and is then starting to lose confidence and get worried by things. So I've got out of my dogs, I've got a couple that fall into each camp.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, like Eric, bless him, he's terrible with frustration, but he'll keep trying something. So if I don't reward him because he's not got it quite right,
Yeah.
he will keep trying again. He will keep trying again, and he might get angry with me and, you know, get frustrated and stuff, but he'll get in. I'll make sure I get my timing right and I reward him, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Riley, he can't handle that type of thing. I've got to help him get it right, so I have to make the criteria for him easier and clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we do, you know, if he doesn't receive his reward after a couple of times of trying, he literally shuts down.
Right.
And he'll either start barking at me or he just walks away
Yeah.
because he doesn't like it. And even when, you know, he's an old man now, so we don't really do agility training per se anymore. But you would see this a lot at agility. I would probably be the one to make the mistake. So we needed to redo what we were doing because I was on the wrong place or said the wrong cue because that's my life. And he felt he'd failed it because we were doing it again, and he would bark a bit more, he'd go round in circles, and he just doesn't handle that well. So I think you have to, if you're feeling like you have to give a pity treat, it suggests your dog's not fully clear what you're asking. So I would make the task easier so the dog's more successful. So we're building the confidence. We're being much clearer about when to give the rewards so that the dog goes, oh, this is what you wanted me to do. So I think, yeah, you've got to be mindful, but I think that's the main thing with dog training in general, whatever method you're using. The timing of your reward is feedback to that dog. So if your timing is off or you're giving feedback willy-nilly, no, the dog doesn't understand what you want. And I think this is what irks me within the positive training where it gets so misunderstood, like the whole distraction versus reward thing. I like this one when we're dealing with reactive dogs, because this is the one that always springs to mind.
Yeah.
You've got a dog who kicks off at whatever, other dogs, people, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll see people just chucking treats on the ground.
Yeah.
So you've seen the trigger, so you've seen the thing that's going to kick your dog off. Your dog hasn't seen it yet. And I'll watch people and they put treats on the ground and they're like, I'm trying to positively reinforce that.
Yeah.
That is a distraction.
Yeah.
Your dog did not even see anything, so it didn't know to kick off. What connection is the dog making with anything? They're not. They're just thinking you randomly chuck food on the ground.
Yeah.
That's good. I get a little bang for it.
Yeah.
But
I think likewise though, if your dog has seen the trigger and has started kicking off at the trigger and you throw down food, what are you actually teaching then? Because for that dog, a cyclist comes past, I yell at them, I get chicken.
I think that one, so I call this your emergency get out of jail card. So in the early days of you trying to change your dog's behaviour around triggers, there'll always be ambush moments. You can't help it. It'll be, like you say, that cyclist just came out of nowhere, or a dog has jumped through some woods out in the path and you didn't expect to see it.
Yeah.
And your dog you and the dog are in the early stages of training. Your dog hasn't got the skill set yet to be able to just walk away and they start kicking off. Or maybe you're on a narrow path and you've chosen that location because nobody ever goes down it. And all of a sudden, here comes a cyclist.
Yeah.
I think in the early stages when your dog has no other coping mechanism, yes, get their head down. Because what we're trying to do in that moment is not allow the dog to rehearse the reactive behaviour as often as they have been doing.
Definitely.
But that shouldn't be your go-to move.
Yeah.
If that's your go-to move, then you're never going to progress any further. You're clearly far too close to the dog's triggers and your dog is over threshold. So any learning capacity, gone. It's up in the air. It's not going to work at all.
Definitely.
So,
well, that's closing the stable door after the horse is bolted, isn't it?
Pretty much,
Yeah.
What's the point?
I know. I mean, I've spent my fair share of time in bushes myself.
So I'm like, get out of the way. I need more distance and I need to... And I think we can absolutely use food to pair up and change the association for the dog with the trigger.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be used mindfully. As in, you need the dog to acknowledge the trigger.
Yeah.
So they realise, why is the food coming? Why do you want them to look at you? You kind of have to do all this. This thing where people tell me, oh, I'm just chucking food down, or people have been to other trainers and then they've maybe come to me, but they'll use terms like, yeah, we use food to distract them.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me go,
yeah,
because you shouldn't be using it to distract. You should be using it to teach and to reward. And
definitely. I think we forget sometimes that we have the big human brains.
Yeah, aye. No.
Like, we need to use them sometimes.
But yeah, I think, I feel like I've just ranted at you what was going on in my head there.
No, that's fine.
But I feel better as a bit off my chest now, because I'm a very proud positive trainer.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it just irks me that it's misinterpreted. And I just wish people would remember that there's a whole bunch of rewards we can use.
Yeah.
Not just food. We can have toys, we can have the environment, and it's what. So it's like, I always call it the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
It's your dog that's receiving that reward.
Yeah.
You know, so it's up to them what they decide is fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be looking for the increase in that behaviour to see if it's worked or not.
Yeah.
I wish people would understand the clarity side of things.
Mm-hmm.
No more pity treats.
No more
just no a bunch of millennials that just get stuff for participating.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be quite selective about how it's delivered, when it's delivered, stuff like that. I think that we should, being positive doesn't mean ignoring stuff. Don't ignore it. You just don't have to lose your nut to stop them doing something that you didn't want them to do.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to stop thinking about using food especially as a distraction. Because I never hear anybody say this about a ball.
No.
So the amount of people that say, oh, if I've got my ball, my dog's totally focused on my ball. I never hear anybody calling that a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Folks seem to call that or what, and I don't understand why food gets as team as it does, but yeah, these are the things I wish people would kind of know about. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Feel better for that now.
Got that off your chest.
Got that off my chest.
Good.
Good. I think I'll go now. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye for now. Bye.